Good afternoon, my chess friends. Today we will look at 4 games by Botvinik. First game, Botvinik versus Spielman. E4, C4, sorry, C4, C6, E4, D5, ED5, CD5, D4, Knight F6. This is one of the most popular variations of the old defense, named after the Moscow master Panov. Knight C3, Knight C6, Bishop G5, Queen B6. That is Spielman's innovation. The correct continuation is DC4 or E6. CD5, Queen B2, Rook C1. This simple reply counters his opponent's idea. Neither Spielman nor his consultant had noticed this rook move. Knight B4. Other alternatives are also poor. Knight B8, Knight A4, Queen B4, Bishop D2, or Knight D8, Bishop F6, EF6, EF6, Bishop B5, Bishop D7, Rook C2, Queen B4, Rook E2, Queen E2, check, Bishop E7, Bishop takes D7, check, and black's kings cannot hold out long in the center of the board. Knight B4, Knight A4. Black's queen is trapped. It has to be ceded. Queen takes A2. Bishop C4. Bishop G4. Knight F3. Bishop F3, Gf3, and black resigns. For example, if Queen A3, Rook C3 will be, and Queen is trapped. This was the first game. The next game will be Alokhin versus Botvinik. E4, C5, Knight F3, D6, D6, D4, CD4, Knight D4, Knight F6, Knight C3, G6, bishop e2, bishop g7, bishop e3. Just one moment. Sorry guys, we will continue. Bishop e3, knight c6, knight b3, bishop e6, f4, castling, g4. This very same move was made in the 11 fish Botvinik game at the 3rd Moscow International Tournament. It goes without saying that Alokhin knew this game and had armed himself with a system containing the move g4. Botvinik was prepared for such a continuation. d5. Botvinik had made the same move against 11 fish, who continued e5. But we will look how first of all move Alokhin was f5. 11 fish played e5, d4, knight d4, knight d4, bishop d4, knight g4 with even play. f5, bishop c8, ed5, knight b4, d6, e5, cd5, knight b4, d6. This move is one of Alokhin's discoveries. If fg6, hg6, then come bishop f3, knight g4, bishop g4, because if bishop takes g4, queen takes g4, will be knight c2, check. Knight b4, d5, knight b4, d6, queen d6, bishop c5. Although it's evidently thought that this move gave him an advantage, but Botvinik is not unprepared. Queen f4. By sacrificing two pieces, Botvinik forces a draw by perpetual check. Rook f1. Queen h2. Bishop b4. Knight g4. A draw is not inevitable. Bishop g4. Queen g3. Check. Rook f2. If king d2, it leads to checkmate. Queen h6. It would lead at once to the loss of the game after bishop h6. It not will be checkmate, but certainly lose of material. Rook f2. Queen g1. If will be king here, queen will take bishop, so rook f1. Check, here, draw. It was the second game. The third game will be Botvinik versus Levenfish. c4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, d4, ed4, knight d4, bishop b4, bishop g5, h6, bishop h4, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, knight e5, e3, knight g6, bishop g3, knight e4, queen c2, knight takes g3, h takes g3, d6. In one of his earlier games, Botvinik had played rook d1. Certain move, rook d1. But in this game was f4. d6, f4, but in earlier games Botvinik had played rook d1. On analyzing this game at home, he discovered an original method of countering all of black's designs which he had not noticed during play. f4, queen e7, king f2. Whilst king on f2 makes black naturally want to move his knight to c5. Knight f8, c5, Botvinik clears the way for the bishop on f1, thus launching an attack on black's king, which soon breaks up black's entire position. dc5, bishop b5 check, knight d7, b2 c6, because knight takes c6. If will be c6, knight takes c6, b takes c6, and the bishop takes c6, and rook is lost. Or king d8, rook d1, cd4, rook d4. When white stuck, cannot be stopped. The continuation, bishop d7, knight f5, queen f6, knight e4, knight e6, bishop d7, king d7, rook h2d1, it also loses. Knight d7, knight f5, queen f6, rook a2d1, g6, or a6, queen e4, king d8, bishop d7, bishop d7, and white wins because queen b2. For example, if here will be check and mate in 12 moves. We'll look how will be made in 12 moves. Bishop d7, king d7, rook d1, queen d4, cd4, c4, queen d5, king e8, rook c5, queen d7, and we see that position is totally lost here. g6, knight h8, knight h6, rook f8, g4. Black's position is hopeless, and Botvinik precisely realizes his advantage with several energetic conclusive moves. Ace. Okay, as we can see, g4, a6, g5, queen e6, bishop e2, knight b6, knight g4, king e7, knight f6, knight f6, queen c6, rook h7, rook, bishop f5, e4, bishop e6, f5, black resigns. And the pre-final game will be Botvinik versus Tal. d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, f3, knight b to d7, bishop e3, c5, knight g2, castling, d5, knight h5. A typical strategy in this interesting variation of the king's Indian defense. Black plays f5 while white, shifting the king away to the queen side, is preparing to start an offensive on the king's side, taking advantage of the weakness afforded by the move f5. This, however, does not mean that the advance of the pawn to f5 is a mistake, for black's pawn be held up on f7. His opportunity for defense would be even less. Such contradictions are the hallmark of complex modern chess. Knight h5, queen d2, f5, long castling, a6, king b1, knight d to f6. This move by black is not good, since it allows Botvinik to open up the h file, which is favorable for him. It would be more prudent to retreat the knight from h5 to f6, which leaves Tal more opportunity for defense. e5, g5, knight g3. Simple and convincing. By launching an attack on the pawn on f5, white forces his opponent to exchange on g3. Black cannot now play f4 with advantage because of knight in this position was queen to e8, but black cannot play f4 with advantage because knight h5, f e3, knight f6, okay, sixth move was bishop e3 was not c5 but e5, knight g2, castling, d5, knight h5, queen d2, f5, long castling, a6, queen b1, knight d2 f6, knight g3, knight g3. Simple and convincing by launching pawn attack, an attack on this pawn on f5. White forces his opponent to exchange on g3. Black cannot now play f4 because knight h5, e3, knight f6, bishop, queen f6, queen c2. Just a moment. It was 12 move, e5, g5, knight g3, here 12 move was here e takes f5, g takes f5, knight g3. Simple and convincing. By launching an attack on the pawn on f5, white forces his opponent to exchange on g3. Black cannot now play f4 because knight takes h5, ef3, ef3, knight f6, queen f6, queen c2, with white in an excellent position. Knight g3. Knight that does queen g6 improve black's position as white plays knight h5. Okay, queen e8, bishop d3, knight g3, and here knight does queen g6 improve black's position as white plays knight h5. Here, knight h5, queen h5, h3, with the inevitable g4. Sometimes the pawn is sacrificed in such situations. e4, knight h5, knight h5, fe4, f4, and evidently this would have been Tal's best method of play. Knight g3, H, H takes G3, C5. Rook H6. Immediately start an operation alone with the open file. With the exchange of the bishop on G7, black's chances for successful defense are even fewer. Okay, this game is I need more time to analyze it, to show it to you, so we will look again at this game 16, chapter 6. We'll look again at this chess game. Yes. So that's it. I wish you all the best and have a good day.